Let's notice together in our time of study some of the building blocks that were used by Samuel in constructing a legacy. The first that we notice is that Samuel lived by trusting in the Lord. That almost sounds trite or cliche. Everyone talks about trusting in God. We have on our money, for all intents and purposes. In God we trust. I question that sometimes. As a nation, do we really trust in God? It says so on our money, so it must be true. But trusting in God involves more than just saying that you trust in God. And if you go back to the time in Israel's history when Samuel lived, you see some rather interesting things unfold. Because of the nation's unfaithfulness, the Lord inflicted on Israel a series of crushing defeats at the hands of her enemies, particularly the Philistines. 1 Samuel 4 and verse 10 tells us that over 30,000 soldiers perished in just one battle. Think about that. 30,000 people died in one day. But despite living in an atmosphere of gloom, doom, doubt, and despair, Samuel's belief and trust in the Lord never wavered. In 1 Samuel 7, beginning in verse 2, the Bible says it was a long time, 20 years in all, that the ark remained at Kiriath Jearim, and all the people of Israel mourned and sought after the Lord. And Samuel said to the whole house of Israel, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your hearts, then rid yourselves of the foreign gods and the Ashtoreths and commit yourselves to the Lord and serve him only. And he will deliver you out of the hands of the Philistines." So the Israelites put away their Baals and Ashtoreths and served the Lord only. When did Israel start to trust in God again? When they put away the things that were taking them from God. Trust involves action. It's not just about saying things, it's about doing things. There was a television program that preceded the 1988 Winter Olympics that I found completely fascinating. It features blind skiers who were being taught and trained for slalom skiing, where you go back and forth down the hill, as impossible as that sounds. Now, I can see and I can't ski, so I can't imagine how difficult. Maybe if I couldn't see, skiing would be easier. I haven't looked into that possibility. But they took the blind skiers and they paired them with sighted skiers, and the blind skiers were taught on the flats how to make left and right turns. And when they mastered that, they took them to the slalom course, where their sighted partners skied right beside them, shouting left or right. And as they obeyed the commands, they were able to negotiate the course and cross the finish line, depending solely on the sighted skier's word. For those blind skiers, it was either complete trust or catastrophe. Now, friends, what a vivid picture that is of the Christian life. In this world, we are in reality blind about what course to take. Now, no one in the 7 billion inhabitants in the world ever thinks that about themselves. Everyone thinks that they're an expert on knowing what decisions to make, what choices to choose, what path to trod. The fact is, we don't know nearly as much as we think we do. We need to rely on the one who sees clearly what is before us. In Jeremiah 10 and verse 23, the Bible says, "I know, O Lord, that a man's life is not his own. It is not for man to direct his steps." You want to know one of the reasons Samuel was a great man? He understood this principle. He understood that he didn't have all the answers, but God did. And he built a legacy of trusting in the Lord, believing that God's way was the best way to live. That's really, to me, in the next couple of generations in this country, going to be the crucible. That's going to be the decision that is going to have to be made by our people. Which way are we going to choose? Is it going to be our way, or is it going to be God's way? That's it. If we don't want to choose God's way, our doom is sealed. If we will choose God's way, well, friends, we've got a hope. We've got a future. That's what Lincoln said going to Washington. Without God's help, I cannot succeed. With God's help, I cannot fail. That needs to be the very spirit that we have. But in look